Alright, welcome to part 2 of the Robot Adventures paints the Y-Wing custom thing of the Suntan. Goodbye. Children, stupid people, dumbasses, shit for brains, Republicans, shitty ass politicians. I hate you guys. I don't hate kids or dumbasses are dumbasses, but you have to take pity on them. But do not watch this. This video is not for you. This video is for people who like my videos and who are interested in maybe seeing somebody paint a plastic model. This is my 5th take at this. Ruben, usually you make your videos in one shitty ass take. That's right. But the first take I did was just, you know, painting and stuff. The second one I was like, well, maybe I should talk about paint, and then I talked about paint too much, and then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about that, and shit, and fuck, and balls, and fucking shit. So, yeah, I've been YouTubing almost 9 years. In February, it will be 9 years. And back in the day, when a lot of us started, like SSJ and Biker Trash and a bunch of the Transformer guys, Too Old for Toys got me into a Gundam. Watching him flex the ankle on a Gundam was like, holy shit. Gundams have moving parts. Transformers don't have ankle things like that, so. Anyway, that's fucking, you guys corrupted me. You corrupted me. I was corrupted. Yeah, back in the day, there weren't videos on how to do videos. But, you know, we had to figure this shit out all by ourselves, and, but now, everybody and their fucking grandmother is making videos about how to fuck your grandmother and other stuff. So I don't have to go into so much detail. Hopefully, I'm going to try to keep this short about paint and airbrushing and stuff like that. So you've already built your model. You built it, and after you built it, that was good, you built it, and then you disassembled it to put on little sprue, like little skewers with alligator clips, and you're prepping it for painting, which I've already painted. Oh, how'd you do that, Ruben? It's the magic of video making. I've already painted this shit. And this is, I said it's my 5th take, so. So you got it ready for painting, and you're going to go buy your paint. Here's a wing. I haven't finished this wing. So please go down to the hobby shop or something like that to pick up some paint. And you might want to consider paint for plastic models, if there's a category for that. The painting industry is huge, so yeah, you got like industrial paint and, you know, house paint and automotive paint and oh, a shitload of paint. And a lot of those paints require some other kind of stuff, like additives and stuff like that, which is probably way over my head because I don't fucking paint houses or stuff. So try to focus on paint for plastic models if you can. There are a shitload of manufacturers who make paint for plastic models. Tamiya here, Mr. Color, also known as Goons, used to the old brand name for it. Used to be called Goons. Oh, there it goes. Sangyo. But now it's called Mr. Hobby or GSI, made by GSI. My personal choice is Mr. Hobby. I like Mr. Hobby. Tamiya is good, but I went with Mr. Hobby. I don't know, you know, there's a bunch of different types of paint out there. Go find the one at Citadel. I think it's popular in England. the land of the Ingalls. So yeah, go get that. A couple of things. So I'm gonna try to do some bullet points. 2, 3. The chemically paints like enamels and acrylics are kind of stinky. The water-based paints are not as stinky, and so that's good. Another thing from my personal experience, and I don't know if there's a way to get around it. If you spray the base coat, like the bottom coat of the figure like this, with like a chemically like a strong paint like acrylic or enamel, then that's kind of good. And then on top of that, you can spray more acrylic and stuff, and they'll be okay. Or like water-based paint on top of that if you can't find the color you want, and then maybe that's okay. But if you spray the base coat, this base coat, primer coat or whatever, with like a water-based paint, it's kind of weak. And then if you spray on top of that, like with a acrylic or something, sometimes you'll get some bleed through where the top coat, the top layers of paint will eat through the bottom layers, and you'll get some smearing stuff, and so not so good. So with this figure, I went with the stinky acrylic as the base, because I wanted to kind of do that, and I had a shitload of extra paint. So when you buy your paint, you'll probably buy the colors you like. I like golden. I like black and green. You can go with the color guide in the manual if you want to go paint it exactly the way it is, but I don't want to do that, so I have a whole bunch of paint and a lot of it left over from other figures. So when I prepare the paint, I put them in these graduated jars and I just keep them there. I have a whole shitload of these. If you buy some paint at your hobby shop, maybe pick up a couple of these graduated cylinders jars. And you'll have, if you're going to get into painting, you'll have some backup paint for something else if you just want to practice painting whatever. It's fun. Also, if you have a friend or anybody you know who has an airbrush, I totally recommend using an airbrush, because the application of the paint is so much easier and it's easier to control. Paint cans are good for large surfaces, like spray that piece of something, but the control is not so good. Maybe if you're a graffiti artist or something, you have better control, but I don't have that much control. And the details, the molding details on these parts are very fine, maybe like less than a millimeter. So if you spray too much of this, you'll just end up spraying over the details, which is kind of defeating the point. The airbrush gives you a lot more control over how thick or how many layers of paint you want to apply. You can see right there that, angling it in the light, you can see some of the details. So I totally recommend airbrush. If you're gonna buy it, I don't know, it's gonna be about $100 or bucks, maybe more, depending on a super nice one. There's so much stuff to get into with airbrushes. I don't want to get into too much of it, but I recommend using airbrushes. We're not painting like a dragon on here. You don't need all these artistic skills to make a fine coat of paint on your plastic model. If you're going to do some weathering or some battle damage stuff, maybe you need a little bit more skill, but that's something we're not going to be doing here. That's another thing. One more thing, if I haven't mentioned, the manufacturers recommend using the paint thinner that goes with their paint. Obviously, is a way of selling more shit. So, but some people talk about nail polish. I never use nail polish, so I don't know how to do that. So, You know, each manufacturer has their own paint thinner. Yes, I don't know if it's all the same shit. Could be. I'm not a scientist. I'm not chemically testing the difference between paint thinner. I don't know. So I just kind of go with this one is this one and this one. The water-based paint has water-based paint thinner. Yay, okay. Some of the water-based paints, they say you can just use water to dilute it. And if you're going to go to the hardware, buy some water-based paint, and then go to the hardware store and buy a bunch of paint thinner, you might make your paint extra stinky, which would make it terrible. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got to say about paint. Please ask any questions. Yeah. Okay, I think I did well. Oh, shit. Did I do well? Oh, I did better than last time. Alright, I think I covered everything. So, I'm going to start spraying. You want to do this in a well-ventilated area. You don't want to start fucking smelling stinky paint because it'll get you high and fuck up your brain, so don't do that. Reuven, did you smell a lot of paint? No, I didn't. I'm normally this way, so don't do that. Alright, so yeah, I think that's all I want to I'm just going to show you all the parts that I sprayed and how I touched them with, I touched them. Yeah. With markers like this. If you don't want to get into the paint and like, oh, I don't know about airbrushing and all this stuff, then you might want to use markers, but it might get a little bit, it's maybe cheap, but it might get really, really tedious because you have to paint everything with a marker, and that spraying stuff with an airbrush makes some tasks very easy. For example, this, all of the pipes I'm gonna spray with the airbrush on the sprue, and then touch them up later with you know, after I nip them off the sprue. All the parts, all these parts that connect will still have the raw plastic color, this off-white, so I'll have to do some touch-ups on that, but it makes spraying it on this makes it a lot easier to handle, a lot easier to paint, instead of individually taking each one of these pipes and putting it on one of these alligator clips and then spraying that and then setting it aside. I can spray it all at once, and so it's just a way of planning, I guess. Alright, I think that's everything. Yeah, alright, so next we'll see me spraying some stuff that I've already, sprayed. So it's magic. Spray that. Usually I'll spray it and then I'll slowly rotate it around and get it from different angles. I'll probably repeat this in the video, but just in case I don't. Just to make sure that I've got a nice coat. Even I'll get the underside because of some of the lips are visible. So, alright guys, let's see me spray some paint. Do this well-ventilated area. Goodbye. Alright. So, I've cleaned my airbrush. And for those who don't know how to clean an airbrush, I don't know if you could even get to that point. If you have an airbrush, you probably know how to clean it. So I put some thinner in there. I removed the needle. If you're borrowing your friend's airbrush and you don't know how to clean it, so you can remove this lock nut here and remove the needle, and then get in there with like a little tiny kind of brush like this. This is like a dental floss brush or some other kind of pipe cleaner. And you get in there and you can remove the front end, the whole front end if you want. like that. If you remove the whole front end, the whole nozzle is gone, and you got the needle going through there, which you can slide back and forth like that. And that allows the paint to go through there, not the nozzle. The nozzle is on this airbrush 3 parts. You can clean all of those out, and you can see down the center there, but it's black, so you can't see any light. Can you see any? Anyway, down in there. Alright, so now I'm going to pour some paint in here, put it back together, and pour some paint in there, and coat my Y-wing. Yay! I'm going to do the black base. So I got my black paint, and I use a little syringe here. This is used for like calligraphy. And then I just plop it in there. Some camera, I don't know how many. But since I'm gonna coat the whole thing, I just put a bunch in there. And then I test it, see if the good. So let's see how it sprays. Now, each spray is so thin and light, I kind of like it. So I can do very, very thin layers, and I can control how thick the application is. So I'll just do that. On this airbrush, I can adjust how much air I push out. And so if I want just a little tiny bit of air, I tighten this valve up so almost nothing comes out. Start, a little bit more comes out. So at this level, a little bit of air is coming out. And then when I pull back the action, this part back, it pulls the needle back, and the paint comes out, of course. And it lets a little tiny speck of, let's look on the inside there, little bit of paint comes up, just a little smidgen. But if I open up a lot more, the valve to release a lot more air, then I can really throw a big fat coat on there, a lot more air. So that's why airbrushes are nice. So there's one, I guess, technique or style that I'd like to know what it's called. If there's an airbrusher out there, and I asked Wakana Man Alan when he came to visit. So this is what I like about. And this is one thing about the way I paint. Usually I mix like a 2-to-1 ratio between paint and thinner. And I've been told that that's too thin. And it means I have to do a lot more, and my paint has a lot more thinner in it, and I have to wait for drying and stuff like that. If I did a thicker ratio, then I just like spray it on once. But so what is the technique? For example, I'm just going to paint this, and I'll show. I got a bunch of air going there, and then I'll paint just a little bit, like a really light coating on there. And if I paint a little bit too much, I keep the air blowing on it to dry it. And so what is that called? When you paint, and maybe you got a little bit too much ink, a little bit too much paint, and then you use the air to dry it off. So I'm not spending time waiting for the thing to dry. Like right now, it's dry to the touch because I blew off all the extra thinner. Is that some? I mean, this is the only way I know how to airbrush. So if there's another way to airbrush where you just like that was a lit, and I'm using the light, like rotating it to see where the, like right there, you can see in the camera, got a little bit too much paint. So then I'll just dry it there. And I probably should do the whole thing, you know, all at once. This, of course, this part here is going to be underneath that other part, and there's a little bit of wet part there, so I'll dry that down. And I use the light to show me where the paint is going. So it's not, I mean, the light you see on the camera is not the light I'm using, so that's why it's like, what? I don't see what you're talking about. And I'm blow drying it here. Another, I guess, thing, I don't know what you call it. It sometimes seems that if I paint too much, or if I got a wet spot, if I half pull the trigger on it, it seems like it helps dry it somehow, but it's kind of weird. Alright, so that looks pretty black. And I want to make sure I even it out. From my perspective, it looks like all one tone of black. I think I layered it on enough so that it's all the same coat. And I want to make sure I get the sides there. So I'm going to do the undercarriage. The underside here. Just one little... Cleaning out the airbrush really helps with this. I think this part, this lip here, That's something that might be visible. That looks really wet. So I'll just dry that down. I'll pull the trigger back when I see something that looks like it needs a little touch up there. Dry, 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 dry. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, so that's going to be my base, and then I'm going to do all the other parts just like that. Yeah, so I got a whole bunch more parts to do like that. And the thing is with these parts, I'm going to have to like keep rotating it so that I can make sure that I get all the different angles. So I'll try this way, then I'll rotate it along, you know, the Y and the Z and the X. Well, maybe not the Z, but you know. All right, so I'm gonna do that, and maybe I'll